Actually. So I'm saying that when they ask you to bring the difference between the private limited companies and the public limited companies, you can start by making your introduction by saying that private limited companies and public limited companies are all business organizations operating within the private sector. Of course, we know there's the private sector and there's the public sector, right? The public sector are businesses owned and controlled by the government, which involves public corporations, while the private sector are businesses owned and controlled by private individuals. Now, there are six categories of businesses operating in the private sector. We have the sole trading, we have the partnership business, we have the private limited companies, public limited companies, franchise agreement, and joint ventures. So these are the six kind of businesses operating within the private sector, and in the public sector we have public corporations. So if you are asked to bring the difference between these private limited companies and public limited companies, you can make it in an essay form, a paragraphic form, but in an area or in a part where you don't know how to formulate your words, you can also make it in a paragraphic form. It just depends on how the question comes. If they ask you to write an essay, then you need to write an essay and make your arguments to be on paragraphs. Is it clear? So let me just make it in a tabular form for you. Now we know that private limited companies, of course, the shareholders are limited. So if the shareholders are limited, it means they will have just one director. So private limited companies have one director. But public limited companies, because the number of shareholders is unlimited, they have more than one director. So they can have as many directors as they want, depending on how the business enlarges. Then secondly, you can say in private limited companies, the number of shareholders are limited. Of course, when we're taking the lesson, we said it's limited to 50. The private limited companies, the number of shareholders are limited to 50. But for public limited companies, the number of shareholders are unlimited. So for private limited companies, the number of shareholders are limited, but for public limited companies, the number of shareholders are unlimited. Now another difference, let's take another line. In the private limited companies, shares cannot be sold in the stock exchange market. Shares are not fully transferred. So you can say private limited companies shares cannot be sold in the stock exchange market. Means that there is restriction of the transfer of shares in the private limited companies. But in public limited companies, shares can freely be sold or transferred in the stock exchange market. Is it clear? So those are the three points. Let's take another one. Now, can you see writing? Can you see? Here, the names of private limited companies ends with LTD. But the names names of public limited companies ends with PLC. Now, don't be confused between public limited companies and public corporations. There are two different types of businesses. Public corporations are generally and basically controlled by the government, but public limited companies are controlled by private individuals, while public corporations are controlled by the government. So don't be confused between the two. Is it clear?
Yes.
Okay. The third one, private limited companies, shares cannot be sold in the stock exchange market. It means there is restriction of the transfer of shares, right? While in public limited companies, shares can freely be transferred or sold in the stock exchange market. And sometimes they may ask you to give the similarities. When it comes to the documentation, they are similar. Because all the two companies, they need a certificate of incorporation before they can start operations. Yes.
The share cannot be
So, so if they ask you to bring similarities between private limited companies and public limited companies, you can easily say that in terms of documentation or the legal procedures, the formation of the both companies, they follow the same procedure. They must present certificate of memorandum of association, article of association to the register of companies to receive certificate of incorporation. Is it clear? So you can also say that the both companies are owned by individuals in the private sector. Shareholders contribute for the existence of the business. So your similarities can also come together with this.
So what does LTD stand for?
Okay. LTD. It simply means limited. This is just to describe that this is a private company, not a public limited company. Okay? They put this word to explain to you that there are certain boundaries in terms of shareholders, in terms of directing, in terms of the capital employed. But when you see PLC, it publicly states that this is a public limited company. And there is another kind of company they call the parasitic companies.
Show both on them.
Have you heard this word before? Parasitic companies. I've explained this in this class before.
It's both.
I said parasitic companies, yes.
Has government-owned shares and
parasitic companies are companies that private individuals own part of the share,
and
the government also own part of the shares.
such as the electric companies. Such as the company.
You need to write it.
Mister,
Yes.
can I go to the office?
Yes, you can go. They are called parasitas. Or parasitic companies. Okay. Companies that